don't really even know what's going on with these live streams. Did you start it just now?
I just did. Let's see.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure if we're actually live or not.
Yeah, I think we have to wait for Cora.
One of these days we'll get this figured out. I can go to the YouTube and look.
It doesn't have the comments, so I'm pretty sure that means it's not live yet.
Can we chat Cora? Let's see.
Genre.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really understand why it doesn't just make you live. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What's the point of the integrations? No, I think it is live, dude. I think we are live. Anybody, if you're in there, can you chat? Because on YouTube it shows it's live.
Oh, so don't start it.
Yeah, I mean, well, but see, I'm logged in as the admin, so I don't know if it's because I'm an admin.
It has a thing up in the top. It says live.
So we're gonna have to cut all this first part out so we don't look like a bunch of fools. There's Josh and Alex, and we're live. Sweet.
Were we just live the whole time for a minute?
Yeah, for 2 minutes. But it's funny because somebody on our team said they were going to let us know when we go live. They did not. Not going to point you out. All right, so that's cool. So the integration did work. All right, and it's 1080p this time. We upgraded to Pro before the last one, but then forgot to they make you change the setting, probably to save money on their end. All right, so let's talk about Kanban boards. So today, what I'm going to build is a really basic but clean Kanban board setup. And for those of you who don't know what a Kanban board is, basically it's a way to sort of manage a process in a business is typically what it's used for. So that could be tasks and project management, where you're drag and dropping things from tasks from one status to another. Could also be something like a sales pipeline, where you're sort of moving a customer through a series of steps to get to an end result you're looking for, or move a project through those series of steps. The concept generally is I've got a set of things that need to be done, or a thing that needs to move through a set of statuses, and you're going to make a UI for doing that. That's a really common method to do that. So we'll build one today that has sort of an outer dashboard. And then inside of that, it'll have what I'm going to call a board. And then the board will have a set of statuses. So each column will be to do, in progress, completed, and so forth. And then underneath each of those, we'll have a task or a set of tasks inside of each of them. And lastly, we'll make it to where you can drag and drop between those statuses. You can pick up a task from one, drop it into the other one. Hopefully we can get all that done in about an hour. We'll see. But I'm going to start from scratch. So let me go ahead and show my screen here. And there we go. All right. Drew, you good? Can we see my screen?
Yeah. Just checking these settings to see if there's a better place to put us. I don't know what's better. Probably this.
No worries. So I'm starting with a totally blank project here. So we're just going to build from scratch. And I did go find an example of one that I could use that was a really simple looking Kanban board. We're obviously not going to build all of the features of this. But I went and signed up for ClickUp, which is a nice task management software. They do a lot more than just task management, but do docs and all kinds of things. But one of the things they have is a nice board. And in there you have statuses, and then underneath each status you have a set of tasks that may need to get done. And you can grab these tasks and move them between the different statuses, right? So you can move them around, change the order of them inside of the same status. So this is basically what we're going to build today. All right, so let's jump back over here. So I'm going to start by building like the base. I'm going to start with the design and then go into the data and then go into the record creation and the drag and drop. That's kind of the order that I'll go in. So I'm just going to drop a blank page on here first. And this is going to be our homepage. And inside of the homepage, we're going to have a couple of things. We'll start with, I'm just going to do an outer div. I'll just call it outer. And I hope we don't have any dev version problems today, but it'll be all right if we do. So I'm just going to call this outer. I'm going to go ahead and do this with style classes. And I'm going to use flex just because that's what I like to use. So this is basically just going to be an outer container. And then we'll add what I'm going to call a header. It's going to be a really, really simple header. It's not going to really have much in it, but just for the purposes of having something in there. Padding, put some padding in there. And we'll go with like 1 EM of padding all the way around. And then I'm going to just put a text box in there. Ooh, there we go. And the header, we'll just call it board. Actually, I'm going to change this to not have that. And then the last thing I'll do is put a border on the bottom. You may change some of the styling a little bit later and make it a little cleaner. At least this way we have, we'll have like a header to start with. And maybe I'll put a little background color on it too. Just do like a grayish background color. And one thing we could do too, we could go like look at just the structure of how they do it, right? So like here they have, this header up here and it has the board as a button, right? So maybe we can go ahead and make it a little button up there with a nice little underline underneath it for that one being selected under the assumption that eventually we're going to have another one. So if I was going to do that, what I would actually do then is not have any padding. Do it like this. And this board thing, I would do it a little bit different. Let's go ahead and just do it all the way. So I'm going to put this in here. This div is going to be called like header button board. And I'll make a new style class, header button outer. And then now that this is inside of there, I actually am going to want it to like not have any margin on it. I'm going to position it inside of this. So right now this header is just like a div, it's just a container. I'm going to go ahead and now put some styling on it. Let's not do a background color. Instead, I'll do display flex here as well. And justify content left. And I'll do an align items left as well. I usually do that by default on some of these things. So here's the board element now, or the board outer. So we want to style that button a little bit. So in here, I'm going to put padding around my button. And I'm going to make another style called header button outer, but this one is selected. For the selected one, we'll have border bottom. We'll just go with like 2 pixels, solid, and I'm just going to pick a blue here. Okay, so now we have the one that's selected has that blue on the bottom. Let's go back and look at our design reference here. So you can see like that it's a much lighter color border on the bottom of that header. I'll probably do something similar here. So rather than have this like dark black thing, we'll go a little lighter. And I'm not going to try and get this like color perfect or anything. Normally you want to kind of color match this stuff and like have a brand. We were just talking about this yesterday, Josh and Drew and I talking about, what we really should do is have a nice brand to start from every time so that we're using the same color scheme across all these different things. So we'll probably start doing that soon. All right, so now I have my little board up there. And this is all inside of an outer. So what I'm going to do next is add another element into the outer. And this is going to be for the content. Oh, I just dropped the wrong thing. I meant to drop a div. Wasn't paying attention. All right, drop a div. This is going to be what I'll call content. So the content is going to be just where I'm going to place everything. So the idea here is I'm making a header at the top, and when you click on board, it'll open the board display into there, similar to how this is. If you kind of see how this is structured, you click board and it opens into this content container at the bottom. If I go to list view, it opens that into here instead. So we're kind of building a similar structure here. Let me do another class. We'll call it content outer. Accidentally double space there. Create it. And what I'm going to do here is put flex grow 1, which will make that grow. And then what I'm going to do is on this outer, I'm going to make this a height of 100 VH. So force that to the actual height of the browser. So I'll zoom out just a little bit here so we can kind of see the whole thing. So now we can kind of start to see that it's separating that out a little bit. I'll probably go ahead and put the content outer to have a background color as well. So this color here, I like this gray color. I'm just going to grab it. So I'm going to inspect that. Let's see if we can find that background color. Let's see. And obviously you're not going to do this for everything, but sometimes I think it's this color right here. Let's see, background color. Paste that in. No, that's not the color. That's the purple. I think I'll just go do it manually because I have a color picker tool too, but it's all right. We can just go like this. So it's going to be somewhere up in here. And we can keep that kind of like a purplish look to it. So we have this pink body, and then the background up here is just that. So let's go ahead and preview this. So let's just preview that here. So now we have our board up there. So let me drag this. I'm actually going to put this over here so we can kind of see both. So let's do left 50% that, and then right that one. All right, so now we can kind of see these different ones. So this is ours, and this is, so I have a design reference next to it. I'll zoom in a little bit here too. So that way everybody can see it a little bit easier. So this is sort of my design reference I'll be using, and then over here I can see what it's going to look like as I'm building it out, right? All right, so let's go back over here. So now what I want to do is when this is clicked, it's going to open another page into this content container. And that next page is going to be called the board page. So I can go here and insert a page, drop this and say, let's call this the board page. And we're going to do the same kind of stuff here. We're going to be setting up some divs, some containers for the outer. So call this outer, and then I'll make a new class. I'll call this board outer. And I'll style that in just a little bit. For the most part, there's not going to be a ton of styling on that outer. I usually like to make sure I have classes on these outers because when I go to do responsive later, it's going to need it. And just make it so much easier if it's already in a class versus inline styling and then coming back. It's just kind of the process I go with. So that's the board. And I don't think I really want too much. I'm not going to try to do any of this, the filtering or searching today. Might add a search bar or something, but other than that, I'm not going to try to do a whole bunch of this kind of stuff. We just don't have time for it. So what I'm going to do is open that board page into here. And then on the board page, we're going to need a grid of cards. And those cards are a column for each card, basically, which is going to represent the status. So let's go ahead and build a couple other pages here. So we've got the board. let's add another page for, call this status card. And it's going to be a little thinner. And then I'm going to do another page. We'll call it the task row. So I'm just basically kind of designing out or thinking through my representation of this in pages, right? So I've got the outer page, I've got this inner page that is the board page. And then inside of that, I have the column, which is the status. And then I have inside of the status, I have a page for each task. So maybe we go status card, task row. So I think we're good there. So let's put some elements on these things. I'm going to start right to left. It doesn't really matter where I start, but we're going to start right to left. So let's drop a text box on the task row. I'm just going to call it task title. So task title is where we're going to put the task title information once we have that. And then I'll go ahead and let's drop a div onto my status card. And again, I'm going to make a status card outer class. And there's a couple things I want to do here, I think. If we go look at the design reference we have, it's almost like there's a floating column here that doesn't actually have a background or anything. And then there's a header in it that has a background and also has a box shadow and a top border and some border radius. So we're going to do the same thing. So this outer one, I don't think it necessarily has any padding or anything. It probably doesn't need any of that. So it's really, I'll probably just leave that alone for the most part because it's pretty much just going to grow. So let's do another element for the header now. So we'll just call this header. Make another new class called status card header. Almost. Statsu card. Be a good name for it. You call it Statsu. That could be the name of your product you're building here. So this is going to have, this is this header, right? So it's going to have a top border. It's going to have border radius and a box shadow. So let's go with border radius. And I'll do, for now, I'm just going to do like 0.25 EMs. We're going to see how this looks. We're going to have to just look at it. Let's see. So one with a background color white on it and box shadow. And I just know kind of what that's going to look like. We can go actually, one way you can do this too. Like I was just going to go basically create it on my own. But let's see if we can find that box shadow. Sometimes this stuff is hard to find depending on how it's laid out, how it's actually structured in there. So this is the header card. Here it is, box shadow. So I'm literally just going to copy that box shadow, paste that on there. So let me just zoom in a little bit. Actually, let's do this. Let's go ahead and throw a grid onto here. And then let's select our status card as the page. And let's go ahead and style this. Make a new class grid, status cards. That's not how you spell padding. Going too fast. Padding, I'm going to go 0. Go margin, also 0. Then let's go with display. We go flex, so it's going to position them this way. And then we're going to go flex wrap, no wrap. We don't want it to wrap. We want it to actually, it's going to be able to slide left and right. So you'll be able to scroll left and right. We'll justify the content, top left, align the items, top left, same thing. So we want it to basically start from the top left. Although actually, this one we probably want to do this. Doesn't really matter because they're just going to grow anyways. So I'm going to leave it all top left. And then I'm going to do a gap on it. So gap is going to make literally the gap between everything. I'm going to start with like 3 EMs and just see what that looks like. And then here, I think I'm just going to set on my outer. There's a bunch of ways to do this. I was talking to Dorian the other day about grid, and he was telling me the proper way to use grid for something like this, but I'm not versed enough in it to just do it. So I'm just going to do it this way. This is not probably how it finish this out. Well, maybe it just depends. Like the problem with doing it like the way that I just did it is getting it responsive is going to be fun. It'll be a fun task to make it responsive, at least like perfectly responsive. But now you can kind of see like this is our header. You can start to see these 3 boxes that are representing these cards, and that's representing this here. Now we will end up adding this add status button and all that stuff as well. But for now, we're okay with just like this. So let's see. So we've got that. Let's drop an element onto here for the title of status. I guess it'd just be status, not title of the status. And I'm going to actually make a class just for that. So be status, status card name. And make this margin 0 so that we can position it all exactly right. So now you can kind of see like each status name is going to show up like this. And then we'll end up, we can do like the status or like the task counts and all that too if we have time for it. Not sure if we'll. This is definitely going to take more than an hour, but I'll just keep going. I've got the rest of the afternoon. I want to do it all the way through, Like might as well get it all the way there. All right, so now on here, what we need to do is this similar kind of treatment that we did here, but we're going to put a grid inside of the status card of the tasks. All right, so let's drop a grid into the outer here. So it's going to go below the status. And the row page is the task row. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll make a new class called grid tasks. And I will also use display flex here. And we're going to do padding 0 and margin 0. And you can see our tasks are now underneath there, but now we need to style these task rows to look like these tasks, right? So I'm going to do the same thing again. Let me grab, that's got a right click on it. So I'll have to inspect like this instead. Oh, interesting. A whole bunch of gateway timeouts on there. So let's go with there. One above it. Here we go. There's the box shadow for the tasks. So now I just copied that. So now I'm going to drop div onto here and we'll call it outer again. Same concept as all the other ones. This is kind of how I go about most things. The very first thing I do is make an outer with an outer class. I almost always need it. It's pretty rare that I don't. Then let's see, is there padding? Yeah, we have some padding going around. I'll probably just do 1 EM just to keep it simple. This stuff takes a ton of tweaking to really get it there. If you're wanting to go for a specific look and feel, it's not just like do it. It usually takes a good bit of back and forth on it. If you're completely ripping off someone else's design, which I would not recommend doing, doesn't take nearly as much back and forth. But realistically, what happens is it's like, okay, I like that. But then when you start implementing it into your own actual system, you end up it all changes, it all just like switches around. At least that's how it works for me. And if I go find that, I'll end up going like, you know what? Because of this other thing I did design wise, I really don't like any of that box shadow stuff I did. And typically I would actually just write my own box shadows anyways. But it does take some real iteration to get to the end result here. Like we won't be able to get all the way there in this meeting or in this session here. Let's do task row text, call it title, and need to get that margin off of there. That's why it's looking so like it's really far apart. And then the other thing we need to do is in this tasks grid, I need to go ahead and put some padding on the top or something to do the separation here, because there's like quite a bit of separation there if you look. So maybe we do like something like that. Oh, and I forgot to do a border radius on this. Border radius is what gives it that nice edged corners. I might just do some pixels here. It looks like it was like a really small amount. I don't even. It might have been. It might have actually been a little more. Maybe let's do that here, and then this one I'll probably make a little bit more. And then the last thing I'll put here is gap. We'll do like a, just do one so gap. Cool. So now you can kind of start to see it's taking shape in here. But before this is going to be viewable in the preview, we've got to start connecting up some data. So what I'm going to do first is go create the data collections. I'm not going to worry about boards as a collection for this, but that is an option to do too. You can have like this thing called boards, and you add a board, and then inside the board you have statuses, and inside the statuses you have tasks. We're going to skip that top level today and just assume we have one board for this. So we'll have the ability to add statuses, and then statuses will have tasks that get added to them. So let's go ahead and make the collections. So I'm going to go into data collections. I'm going to make a new one, and we'll call the first one statuses. And I'll make a new field. We'll call the field just name. Drag that over. And then, I don't know, I guess we could have a color. Let's do a color on it. Because if you look, we actually didn't do that, put that border on the top. It'd be nice to do that. I'm assuming when you click this, yeah, so like they have you select a color and stuff. We probably won't go that far with it, because making that little picker and all that's going to take some real effort, but we can just drop some colors in there, and then we can make it actually show up that way. And then let's do tasks. This is where we're going to have a little bit of relational stuff going on. So we're going to have title of the task. And then we're also going to have the status of the task. And actually, there is a new feature. This isn't launched yet, so y'all can't use it yet. But in here in the field types, there's a new type called a collection relationship. So I can just select the statuses and say I want to display it as the name. So now if I go make a couple of statuses, so let's say we make 2 statuses. So we'll do the same thing, to do and complete. So I'm just going to make these from the back end here. So we'll go to do and complete. And the color I'm going to use here is that. And let's do maybe D2, 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 something like that. So this is black and this is like a gray. All right, and then in the tasks, if I add a record here, and I say, my first task is here. Now I can actually select the status directly here. So that's complete. So it's really nice having this, because you don't have to, if you're wanting to see the relationships in here, especially if usually the relationships in a Bildr project aren't actually selected in here in this part of it. Those are created when the user's doing things, but it does make it really nice to be able to come in here and just see it. Put spell check inside of there, just for me. All right, so now that I've got a few things, let's go ahead and do some data association here. So that's just going to get all of them. I'm not worrying about like deleted ones or anything like that. And then status, we're going to go pull that from statuses collection and from the name. And then let's go ahead and in the page load, we're going to do an action. I'm just going to set the style property on the on the header, not the outer. This is going to be border top. Actually, let's go border color. And then the border color is going to come from current record field value, this status color. Right, so this is going to set that border color. Color, and then we also need to, over here, we didn't actually put the border on here, so let's go border top. 3 pixels, solid, and let's just, it's probably not that big. Yeah, it might actually be. I think this is too much. Go like that. And then what's going to happen is that color is going to get replaced basically. And we make it transparent by default, and then it gets added on the page load. All right, and then now we're going to go to the data here. That's coming from tasks, but we need to filter it because on the status card, we only want the tasks where the status is the current status, right? So we're going to choose the current status ID. Okay, so that's going to filter it like that. And we are going to add an order and a sort here to do the drag and drop in a minute, but we'll leave it alone for now. Actually, let's go ahead and just add the order field so I don't forget to come back to it. So let's go here. We're going to need an order field on both. And Drew, feel free to stop me if anything needs to be handled.
I don't think so. There was one comment about how you're entering styles very quickly with the enter button. That's about it.
Over here?
Because you type in the whole name and press enter, so it looks really fast. It looked like we upgraded it so that you could select, select the style and hit enter, which we're gonna do at some point.
Yeah, this search needs to get much better. But yeah, usually I'm like actually just typing the entire thing and just knowing, like, I just have enough muscle memory on it to get it right.
Yeah, it shows you're typing it. You see it in the autocomplete. That's how you know you're typing it. But if you press enter too early, it'll add half of a property name and it won't work.
Exactly. Okay, so cool. Well, feel free to stop me if anything comes up. Let's add the order here. We'll go order ascending, and actually this should have order too. So let's go here. Drag this over as well. And one of the things we're going to do is actually bind this order column to the grids, because then the grids will actually handle the order for us, which is really nice. So we'll do that in a minute too, because for the drag and drop, when you drop the task in, or if you like want to rearrange the order of the status cards, which is probably the first thing we'll do, is just rearrange the order of the status cards in the drag and drop. When you do that, setting the order, like if we were having to calculate the order, it'd be pretty difficult. So the grid actually does it for you, and you can actually just auto save the grid itself, and it'll automatically update the order for us. So it's pretty nice. Let's see. So let's go here, tasks, and title. On that, I think I got everything. The only other thing is over here, we need to make a new flow for open board, not open the page, which is the board page, into the content. And I think we'll probably just nest that on page load too. So it'll just run. Okay, so let's just see what that looks like so far. Refresh over here. There we go. Cool. All right. So obviously I would prefer to have some like fonts and things like that. But it's looking pretty close. You can kind of see the difference there. I think I might do uppercase here too. That's nice that they did the uppercase there, just because it makes it obvious that it's like a different thing. So let's go here to that style, and there's a property called text transform. So this is where you'll see me like, which one was it? Text transform. I've been actually using, you can see it did that. I've been using ChatGPT over Googling and going to Stack Overflow for a lot of things since last week. It's actually way faster, and it gives me like, here's 3 examples of how to do that exact thing. It's so much cleaner.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. All right. So we've got our first task and our second task, and now what we want to do, I want to do a couple things. Let's put like a button right here, or we can do it right here, to add another status, right? So we want to be able to add a status from here, and then the only problem is I'm not going to have a color picker.
There's a comment that says, "Say that again." I don't know if it's talking about the GPT stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the Chat GPT stuff?
Yeah, I think people will just agree that it's crazy. It's the new Google.
That's nice being able to like, how do I make text uppercase with CSS? That's so much faster than
That's really sweet.
clicking on something. It's just ridiculous. And it also explains things in ways that you just can't get. I mean, you can, but you're like having to interpret someone's bias over 20 years of development or whatever for whatever they're doing. This is just much more straightforward with it. One thing I want to do, let me add a second task to the to-do just so we can see what it looks like with that before we go further. So I'm going to go into tasks. We'll add another record, another one, and this is going to go to do, and let's go refresh here. Cool. Yeah, so that looks all right. You could go a little further with the design, but I think it's okay for now. Really the hard part here, I think most people know how to like, add a button to create another record and things like that from here. I'm not sure if, what do you think, Drew? Should I go into that level of stuff of like making it easy to add from here, or is it more important, do you think, to do the drag and drop?
That's a good question, because I feel like the adding into a grid, there's a couple things in there that are interesting, but really, I bet a lot of people are interested in drag and drop because that's more of like an unknown.
Yeah, and it's a little more complicated to figure out too, Like
Oh, you mean a drag and drop ad specifically, or just doing the drag and drop?
Just drag and drop, like drag and drop this task from here to here.
Yeah. I feel like that's what people would want to see if I had to guess. I don't know.
Let's do that first, and then if I have time, I'll go and do the add buttons everywhere. It's not a big deal to add those, but so it's interesting that you can't actually like, how do you reorder this? Collapse column. Like, I'm surprised that there's no like, I just expected I'd be able to just drag and drop one of the column here to rearrange the statuses. Like, what happens if I do this?
It disappeared.
Oh, I just took it a sec. Okay, so yeah, I can't.
You sure you can't drag and drop this?
You can't.
Weird.
Maybe
there's another view where you arrange them, or like the 3 dot in the right, top right, you can do edit or something.
That's what I was thinking. This edit statuses. Yeah, this is probably where you. Oh, I see. They have like status types too. That's why. So you're actually arranging them inside of this, There's multiple of that type of thing. So it's just a little more complex there. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let's do this add task button in here at least. let's do that, and then let's do drag and drop, rearrange, and move them between panels. Let's go there. Cool. So let me cut this left again, so we have both. Just a little. All right. So where I'm going to put that, I'm going to put a button below this grid, basically. Below the grid, and we will style this a little bit here. This is add task. Put some padding. Go. Just a little space in between. And we're going to make this, I'll style this, and I'll also make it to where it doesn't show up unless you put your mouse into this. One thing we might want to do as well on this outer, I think all I have to do is put a height of 100%. We're going to want, well, I don't know, actually. Is that what we want? Yeah. That's interesting. Look, like if like it doesn't show up over here. I just expected it like when you rolled into that column, even at the bottom, it would show that one. And it does it on that one, but not on these. Oh, look, it's in it there.
Oh, it's probably you can't add a new task to complete.
Oh, that's why. This has some setup on it. That's what it is. Okay, so it is doing what I was thinking of when you're mouse entering anywhere on it. So let's see real quick. Just want to double check that is, yeah, I think I actually need to do this, right? This needs to be, I don't think this has a height on it, so it's just growing, you know? So it needs to be like min height.
I think you do a line item stretch too.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I was thinking that, but if I do that and the height of this is still small,
then it won't matter.
Yeah, I think it won't actually do it. Let's see. No. Oh, it's this whole outer, like everything's, because I'm not growing it, you know what I mean? Like nothing in there is being set to it. Like this outer is not, nothing is set to like grow out.
Yeah.
I was expecting, my original thought was it's just all going to grow down. I don't need any of that, you know. But if I want to make that roll in, it doesn't need that. All right, let's do this as display none by default, because I don't want to show that task button all the time. And then what I'm going to do is on not click, on mouse enter, I'm going to make a new flow, mouse enter, and we're going to do a show, and we're going to show the task button. And then I'll go back here and on mouse leave, make a mouse leave flow. I usually actually tie these to a mouse leave flow, like I call it mouse leave, because I'll end up wanting other things whenever they put their mouse in. So go like that, and we're gonna hide that button. And every time there's like a little lag in dev, I think, oh no, are we getting like the lockups like you had to deal with last week? So now, yeah. Nice. So it is all the way down. Cool. This is what I was seeing the other day. Remember I was telling you, Drew, that there's like,
hover issue.
Yeah, it's like a weird hover state issue or something. I don't know if y'all can even see it, but also when I put my mouse over this stuff, it like discolors things. Like the browser is acting crazy. Like it's not in Bildr, like it's just in other apps I'm using. I go put my mouse over something and like the color changes and stuff. It's really weird. I do need to update Brave though. It's an update, so that's probably why. All right, so now we've got those on it. Let me re-click that to reopen it. Nice. So we can see what it looks like when there's, tasks underneath. All right, and then on click, we're going to do a new flow for create task. And we're going to create a record. It probably is good to do this because we need to do the order here. So we're going to associate it to the status. And that's going to come from the current record, which is we're on this status card. So the current record is a status. And then we also need to do the order. So the way that I usually do this is I'll take the length of it. That's how I'm going to get the order to put, right? So right now the order is actually, you know what? I think there's a bunch of ways to do this now, because if you're going to use if we're going to use the grid list to do the ordering, which we are, you can actually just set like any value in there basically, and it's going to throw it to the end because it's numerically sorting it. So if you put like a string in it, it's going to put it at the end. So it actually won't even matter. I'm actually curious because I haven't done that of just like not put in order. I'm not sure what it does if I just ignore it and I have it tied, because usually I'm like,
I think it puts it at the end. I think I was like pleasantly surprised one time. It was a nice shortcut for what I was doing. I was like,
okay,
oh, cool. No,
let's go that way.
And then you
Yeah.
can just save the grid and it resaves all the orders.
Exactly. So let's do that. So on the grid list, I have this field for order. And what I'm going to do is select that. Actually, I'm sorry. This is a list of tasks. And I'm going to select the order field. So this is telling the grid that I want the order to come from the field inside of the records, right? And then the other thing we want to do is on change of the grid, we're going to auto save it. And so what it'll actually do is the grid is smart enough to know, okay, it's coming from tasks, and you've set up the order here to come from that field, and it'll actually automatically store it for you. So this is going to be nice whenever we add things to it. It's going to be nice for whenever we drag and drop. There's an action to just like set where you move a row below or above another row. And when you do that, you just set it in, it reorders it, and it saves the order across all of them. So you don't have to like try to calculate anything or anything like that. It just does it for you. But let's see if I do that click. And I think I'm trying to decide if I want to do, there's a bunch of different ways to do this. So you can do things like I can manually add a row to the parent grid. Like sometimes I want to do it that way. In this case, I don't really want to. And another way to do it would be to basically rerun the page binding, which will reload that set. Can y'all see that? Did you see that, Drew? The
It was like
discoloration
blurry or something.
Yeah, the discoloration. That's what I've been seeing. It's so weird.
It was hard to see.
It's like I move my mouse around and like everything gets discolored. Okay, so tasks, I create a record with the status ID in it, and then we're just going to set that in there. Now we might want to we could do like the task title and just default it with some text of like untitled, so we have something in there. Usually I would go a little further with it. Like if I'm going to have an actual task here, then I would not put a value of untitled in there. And instead I would do logic on the task row page that says, if there is no title, display it as untitled or something along those lines. All right, let's redo that. And I accidentally hit refresh because I was thinking it wasn't going to work. Sorry. It worked, and then but it did not put it in the order I was expecting.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go look at, I'm curious. I go into tasks. Yeah, I just didn't place an order at all. But I wonder, oh, wait. I think it might just be because we're not telling it to. This page binding isn't going to run the change on this. You know what I mean? So it's not going to do that work. Yeah, I mean, so I'm trying to decide which way I want to do this. There is this one where I can actually tell it, to get to use this information that was just created and
Yeah.
trigger the change event on the grid, you know? There is that one.
Does
That's
that
one way.
save the record?
No, that well, so this record gets created, then you run that with the context of this. You know what I'm saying? And so like you literally set the row in it at the end.
Mm.
But I think the way that I like to do this is actually by actually setting the order. Like I like to get the order, add one to it, and then set it in there with that. But I think because we are structuring the order, not status, because we're structuring the order from the grid, I think if we literally just put a number one in there,
Yeah.
it's going to do it. Because those grid rows are all going to have like, see, yeah, see that puts it at the end. Now we just need to trigger this to make sure that it reorders everything, that it sets everything, and I think that's all we're going to have to do. Trying to decide how I want to do this though, because I'll personally like don't use the page binding in this way. Normally, what I'm going to do, because the reason I don't like using page binding in that way is because page binding is going to end up doing all kinds of other stuff. Like right now, it's already resetting the status name and running this. And when you get into like actually building an app, you're gonna have all kinds of other flows in the page binding. So what I'll usually do is actually have a separate flow. It's called like refresh.
This is what I was gonna suggest. This is what I would do too.
Yeah, I like doing it this way. Like for really simple projects, just straight up using page binding is not a problem. But if you're going to build a Kanban board for real that's actually organizing process, you'll end up making it way more efficient by doing things like this. So what I'm going to do is make an action that does the same thing that the page binding does, but it's just specifically for that grid. And we're going to use the set value action, set element value. And you can use this for refreshing tasks or refreshing a grid or setting a value or whatever you want to do. In my case, I'm going to set the grid list with a data collection of tasks. We're going to get all the fields. And it's the same filter that we had set up on that grid for the data binding. So we're going to filter the status by the current record field value of the status ID. Okay. And then on this, I can set this toggle of trigger. So this is going to trigger the change event of that grid. And the change event of the grid is going to save the order. Right. So if I come in here and add another task, actually, I don't think hang on, have to nest the refresh in here first. And make sure to put a wait between anything like this because you need to make sure that it finishes the save before it refreshes those. So if I hit that, it actually went ahead and reordered everything. You can see that it like actually placed the order on all of it. So now we go look at the data collection. We go to the tasks. You can see that it's actually put its orders in now. Like it has the order in there. So this is that one that was the new one, that I just created with the one in there. Now I'm curious with this, Drew, if I don't include the order,
Yeah, because I thought it should have overridden that one.
No, because see, it puts it in with nothing.
Yeah. But did it just run the trigger? Did it trigger the change and run the save? Because then wouldn't it fill out that order?
Yeah, but I wonder if it's just not there yet.
I think it's going too soon.
Let me think about that. No, it has to be there.
It puts it in visually.
No, it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Why would that not be? Because it's setting it with that data and then running the change,
Mm-hmm.
I want to see something. I wonder if when we're working with a grid, we really should be doing this instead. Let's just look. Status.
Yeah, like if you try to get a value too soon, you won't. But if you get data, you can. It's good. It's a good attempt. We'll see.
Oh, but this doesn't have the same. It's treating it totally different. I don't think this is gonna work either. I think it needs to be like this. But it's funny because like I literally am rebuilding our cycle system, and I built a very similar system to this over the last like couple of weeks, just like in the evenings and stuff. And what I literally calculated every time. That's probably why I haven't run into this like what's the best method because I always just recalc it. Um, but yeah, putting nothing in there is gonna throw it at the top because it's literally gonna have zero, like or not zero, it's null, So null is always gonna show up at the top. So I think first of all, we should be doing. Let's go back here and on the create. I think we do need to put something in the order because I had deleted that out. If you remember. So normally, what I would do is get the current and add one to it. And that's why like every time I do it, it'll work. But let's do this. I want to start it clean, like not have anything in there because the real way that people will be adding it to something like this is just from the UI here. So what I want to do is go in here, go to data collections, tasks, select all, and we're just going to delete them all. All right. And then let's refresh the board, add a task. And just so we can make sure and see what it's doing. I think this is going to work every single time now, But a part of it was I had data in there that was like, unstructured. Oh no, it didn't work. Why? Why would that
You
not
can always do a sort by order and then a secondary of created date or something. Well, actually, I guess that wouldn't work in this case.
No, I think it's because it's something with like the value inside of there has
I think right now it's not resaving the order. So I think right now all three of those have an order value of 1. And that's why I put them out of order. That's my guess.
I think the one that was there before had an order of 1. So like I think what it's doing is it's actually interpreting that 1 as 1.
You should put something else in it, like a string.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. But I still don't like any of these methods. I think
if this puts it at the end though, and it resets it right away, it should work. I thought that's what I usually do, but I don't even know. Yeah, that's weird. There's a question in the chat about is the built with Bildr footer going to be standard on non-paid sites now, which it is, right?
Yes, it is. It is. I'm not sure how I want to do this. This is really weird because the way that it should be the same as what I'm doing in my other system, where I actually go get the count and I set the count in here. So it would be like it has, in this case, it's 3. So it would just be 4.
Yeah. That's why I think the error here is that it's not resetting it. Like it should be recounting it afterwards. Yeah, the 1 would always put it at the end, and then it would just recount them and resave them all.
Think for a second. Why would it not be doing that?
No. The only thing I think is this change event's firing too soon. Like it's firing, but that would be like a bug in the core, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or it could be the other thing is I don't usually use autosave for this. I wonder if it's pulling it from the value and not the data here.
Yeah.
Let me try that real quick because it's just like when I'm building a real system like this, I use the autosave and that stuff for like simple things like updating a field and that kind of stuff, but not for something like this. I would almost always do like a change grid flow, specifically because I know what I'm going to end up doing is when that grid changes, I'm not only going to save the order I'm also going to do like 100 other things or whatever, you know? So this, I'm going to update the tasks that are actually just in the grid. So it's literally just like pull the grid, but I would pull the data. That's how I would always do that. So let's see if that resolves it. Not, then I will resolve this afterward and update everyone. So we can move on to the drag and drop. Just gonna trash all these out.
It's a lot of good little tips today. Like that's a good little tip, I feel like.
Which part?
Just the fact that you can do that, just like set the whole array back in, and because it has all the IDs lined up, it's just going to update the records.
No, so that it still doesn't have. What?
So we have that grid set. It's set to sort it by order, right? On the actual properties.
What? Oh my gosh! No.
Data's still in there.
I'm being dumb here. Hang on just a minute. Let me delete all this real quick. No, because data can't do that, because the whole point of data is it doesn't have, the whole purpose of that in a grid is to not include any of the calculated context, you know, which is like the order. That's adding it above. I can see it.
It's still just not. It shouldn't have that one in there, because the next time you calculate it, it puts a value in. It replaces the one with a value.
This is like blowing my mind here why this is happening.
It's a tangent at this point.
And let's do, this is a fun one too. When you want to, like in here, I make a change to this, and then I'm going to trigger the parent grid to run its change event. So like if I change this now, let's go with, I'll just put a space in here. So that should have updated
All
of the orders at that point, right? It
Nope.
didn't. It's something else. This is something totally different than what I'm thinking. Because this absolutely, but see how it's going 0 and then 2? I'm almost positive that it's like treating it. You know what I mean?
Oh, like if it's number 1, it
I
keeps
think
it
it's
as number 1, but
treating
it
it.
changes all the other ones, something like that.
I think it's treating it as number 1, even though it's not. But then the sort is
right.
The sort is doing alphanumeric and going, well, that's zeros in front, and so let's, you know, so those are first. You know what I'm saying? It's something like that. Why would it do? This is a long tangent, guys. Sorry.
Try just doing a space or a 0. Well, 0 would put at the top. It wouldn't be what you want, but
let's try a space. I like that. Rando. No space. See, that makes sense to me, because it's going to put a space is going to come before, you know.
But yeah, why is it going to come before why is it going to come as the second one? Because it's 0 and then space. Is that why?
Is Dorian watching this? Am I like doing something totally off here? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. This is not at all what, like, literally the project I've been building for like the last 2 weeks doesn't have this problem. I literally have drag and drop and all that stuff in it, but it's way more complex. Like, I'm doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Dorian's been alerted. What? I don't know.
But okay, I'm gonna try one more time from scratch. I'm gonna try it with empty from scratch. So what's not making any sense to me is, why doesn't that, like this right here, this should already have the order in it.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's not updating when on that change event, the first one, when you add it. When you add it and then add it into the grid and fire a change event, it's not updating on that one. Well, if you added a second one, then it does, I think. That's what's, I don't know. Try just putting 0 in there and just see what happens. It'll show up at the top, but see if it works. Dorian's coming.
I just want to see if he's got any ideas of like why in the world would that not. But this is the issue right here. It's that should be reordered. That should already be 0000 whatever. This is not making any sense to me. Why it's not reordering it at all.
It's doing it sometimes though, right? Like it's doing it just not for the new one, I think, because other values turn into those numbers. Do you want to explain it to Dorian? He's in here now, but he wasn't paying attention before, so he doesn't know what's going on right now.
One sec. One sec. Let me look at something first. And then yes, I do. Try this though. I wanted to see it's just make sure that it's actually setting the data like that, and it is. Okay. Let me get it back to the state that it was in real quick. So create task, remove that. So this is how it was set before. So maybe Dorian can tell me what he sees that's different. All right, so let me just trash out this data. All right. So I've got a Kanban board here. And when I add a task, that's running this flow that creates a task with the status ID to put it in the same card with a title of untitled. And what I'm trying to do, what I normally do, is have it. I think the reason that it works for me is because I normally set an order value here that is a count of the current set of them plus one. And I think that this is actually just interpreting it. Like, I'm curious what happens. So basically what happens is like if I just put like a 1 in here and then I click add task. Oh my gosh. Sorry. This is not the right thing. This is supposed to be refresh tasks. My bad.
Sort of like knew that, but I wasn't really. I was like thought I was misunderstanding it, so I didn't say anything.
No, it's when I just like replaced everything back in there and was like, oh wait. All right, let me do that again. All right, so when I add a task, it adds it here, and when I add another one, what I expect it to do is have the correct order on both, but it doesn't reset the order of the second one. And whenever I add a third one and look at the data, it's like it's treating that number or something. And it's like it's not always recalculating with the order in it. So I have the order here, tasks order tied to it. We have the data associated to it, tasks, with the order being the sort. With the event of change grid on change, which just updates the record. It updates all the tasks using the grid. But this is where I expect it to have the proper data. If I look at the network, like it should have already, when it runs that, so it saves the task and then it updates all the tasks. This should be the one. We have all 4 of them. But the order is not going to be right in all of them. Like this has 0003, 2, but then just the number 1 and 0. Like Have you seen this before, Dorian? Like,
You
I don't
double
get.
check that the actions. He just asked to make sure the actions on the change event.
Yeah, on the grid, on the
Yeah.
grid change. Yeah, so on the grid change event, it does this change grid, which literally just is the tasks, task collection from the grid list itself. So it's just pulling the whole thing. And it is doing that. Like that's what this is when I run it, this second call. It is definitely doing it. But what's weird, it's like now that one has a 1, but like one of them
Yeah.
just has a number 1 instead of like the actual calculated order value. I'm pretty sure that the reason that I've never run into this is because every time I do it, I end up in my thing where I create. It's like in my create task flow, the very first thing I'll do is set a variable of I'll get the task count. Because see, normally, almost every time I'm doing something like this, I've already got the task count because I've got it up here, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like incrementing it. I know what's coming next, and I always just like that +1, and it just is already there. Let's do it real quick though.
Dorian did suggest a good workaround too, which is you could just do numeric sort as a path to like sort it after you pull the grid in.
Just do numeric sort on it. Well, the problem I saw, that might work for most of the time,
I
but
don't know if it would work with this adding it with the furthest number up and then letting it resort the order. Like the whole system, that might not solve everything for it.
well, the reason I would have a problem with it is because I saw like this right here. This is what I saw earlier. See, this one has 0001,
Oh
and this
yeah.
one has 1 still.
Yep.
So it still won't get it exactly right.
Yeah.
What I'm doing here is getting the length of the grid, the current length of the grid. And there's a little bug in dev where when you duplicate, it resets the name above it, but it didn't actually reset the name. It's just, I have it written up already for myself to fix.
Nice.
+1. So if you're seeing that grid, you're like, what just happened? Actually, sorry, this needs to be math. And task count +1. And then what I'll do in here, this order is not, it's not just a thing. It's like it is the next one. And I think this will solve it 100% because this is normally what I've done. Because every time you add one, I'm like incrementing, showing the count up there and all that stuff. Since we've got the count, now we can just show it too. I'm like 99% sure that already worked because I could see the way that it was loading it. Yeah. So now and when I do it again, it is doing a numeric sort, I bet, on it already. It's so weird to look at, like skipped 3. Why?
Yeah, it's weird.
This makes no sense.
I think it's like bug level. It's something weird.
Maybe it's something in Bildr dev too. I didn't really think about it.
Yeah. I didn't think about that either.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it. All right, so let's move on. it's enough. All right. So we can type in here now. I did make that. I don't know if y'all caught that. The way that you do that, if you want to make that editable, I went in, set the property for make editable, and then just set the event on blur, which means like to remove your focus from it. So remove the cursor from it. Just run the autosave because it's bound, it'll automatically save it. So that's how that works. So now I've got a bunch of tasks. So let's do some drag and drop. So there's several things about drag and drop that we got to think about. So one is there's like things that are draggable, and then there are things that are drop targets, right? So what we want to do here is actually make the draggable thing also the drop target, except for the situation where there is no task over here. So like the drop target needs to be the whole outer thing, right? So the whole status when there isn't one. Look at that. You see that? The button's missing on it's so crazy.
Yeah, sounds weird.
I'm telling you, the browser's
I
like
don't think I'm seeing that on mine.
it's probably just like my I need to update or something, but it's crazy. Every once in a while, it's something like that happens. Um, so the drag thing is the task itself. We need to be able to drop on a task and move it below or above it. So the drop target is a task, but also the status itself needs to be a task. The whole needs to be a drop target. The whole status card, just in case there isn't one. Like if I want to move one of these over to complete, there isn't a drop target there if there's no task there. So we have to make status card a drop target and make the task card, the task row, also a drop target. So the first thing we're going to do is make this draggable. So if I try to drag it right now, it's not going to do anything. Like you can drag text because that's just the browser letting you. But if I try to drag like that, it's not letting me do it. So on any container, you can actually just toggle on draggable and droppable. Okay, so if you want to make that container droppable, just toggle that on. The draggable part, there's a couple of settings here. One is you can do like an actual drag image. So if you want like a special image just for when it's dragging, so the browser will automatically, when you start dragging, replace what you're dragging with to show that image. And then this offset is in pixels. It basically just goes right, left, down, up, depending on what you put in here. And it just kind of like positions the thing you're dragging that distance from your cursor. Right. So depending on how you want it to feel when the user grabs it. What I usually do though is this drag image element, which is you select an element from the current page. So what's nice about that is you can actually pick the thing you're dragging, like in my case here. So when you start to drag, you're dragging that particular element. And then there are some events that we want to set up. So there's a couple of things. If I just type in drag, you can kind of see them all. So when the user starts to drag, we're going to need to do some things. We're going to need to do some things if the user stops dragging at the end of the drag operation. And we're going to need to do some let's see, we'll need drop for sure, because we're going to drop on that same outer container. And then we're going to end up also doing this drag enter. So like you kind of think of it like when something is dragged into that container, what do you want to do? So like in our case, we'll probably put maybe like a thick border at the bottom, something like that. So you kind of want to set up all these events. So there's drag enter, and then there's drag leave, which is when an element leaves a drop target. So it's like as you're moving this thing around, we can trigger flows based on everything that's going on. So let's start with the drag start one. I'm going to make a drag start event. I'm sorry, flow on that event. Actually, we can, no, we can't. So yeah, sorry. When you do drag, there's one thing there where if you haven't set any drag start event, then this won't show up, right? So like the browser won't actually make the image work unless you have actually set an event for something happening when it gets dragged. It's just how the browser does it. So you need to make sure and do that if you're gonna set it up and you like forget to do that, you'll come over here and start dragging and you're like, it's not showing the image, but it's just because you haven't set up a drag event yet. So the thing we're going to do here is set a variable, because I'm going to need to know the context of the one that I'm dragging. And the context that I need to know is what's called the array index. So when you have a grid like this, it's an array of data. And there's an index to each one of these. And the index starts at 0. So it'll be like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So what we want to do is know which one we're dragging. And I'm going to do that by setting a variable using the current array index. I'll set that into the root page. Say this is the one that's dragging. So we'll set that into the root, and we'll call it let's call it dragging index. And the value is going to come from a variable on the current page called underscore array index. So the grid actually tracks these array indexes for you automatically. So like if something gets drag and dropped in, it will automatically reset all the array indexes, for instance. So we're going to set that dragging index, and we're going to use that when we drop it on another one. So if I go look at this, if I open my debug, if I just like drag this and then come over here and look at the root variables, you can see that dragging index is 2. If I drag the first one and look at the root variables again, dragging index is 0. So we're going to use that variable value to know the context of what we're dropping. And then we're going to, on drop, make another new flow. We'll just call it drop. And this is where we use the grid actions. There's one in particular called move specific row to new position in the grid. And so what we want to do is, in our case, we're going to move it after. And the row we're going to move is in that variable. And the target row is from the current array index. So this is where it gets a little tricky because you're like using the same row. You're like dropping it on itself, but a different version of itself, right? You're dropping like row 1 onto row 2. So you're basically, in this case, reordering it is all we're doing. In a minute, when we drop it into another one, we're going to have to add another step to that to also change which status it's in. Let's just drag this, and I'll just put it like on top of this one, and it drops it down there. So let's move like this untitled one up here. You can see it puts it in between. And that should, oh, we didn't trigger the save. So we need to resave the order when we do that. Otherwise, it's not going to actually rechange the orders. So after this move happens, we just want to do this triggered grid change event. And then that's going to make it do the save because we set that save up on the grid. So if I start it over again, I'll drag this up here and drop it. And now it's saved that. I think now, actually, if we go look at the orders, it's going to be perfect now.
Yeah.
Because that will reset them all exactly. Yeah. So let's do a couple of other things here. We want to do on drag enter and drag leave. We want to do a couple of things. So on drag enter, what I want to do is make like a border, a bottom border here. And there's a lot of ways to style this where you could make it different ways of how you want it to look, you know, whenever somebody's dragging. We could also make 2 drop containers, like one for the top and one for the bottom. So that way you could drop above or below. For now, we're just worrying about dropping below. Like I'm not going to try to do one or the other. So like if you wanted to move, say you wanted to move this one to the top, you have no real way of doing that right now because when you drop it here, it's just going to put it below. So you'd have to go from this one and move it down instead. So let's do a new drag enter. Drag enter as my flow. And I'm just going to do this manually. Actually, let's do a class on it. So we'll add a utility class here. We'll call it task drop border. This is border bottom. We're going to go like 3 pixels solid. We'll just do a blue. Like that. Oh, might want to actually pick something off of here. Maybe like that. Cool. So it'll look like that when you're going to drop it below it now. So I'm going to remove that because we don't want it on there by default. And then in my drag enter flow, we're going to do an add class action. And the class we're going to add is task drop border. We're going to add it to the outer. And then if I go back to my events, when we leave, I'm going to do a new flow called drag leave, where we remove the class. So what's nice about this too is if I go change the class to make it look different, it'll just automatically apply across all this. So we're going to do the drop border and remove that from the element. So let's just look at what that looks like now. All right, so if I drag here, you can now see it's got a, if I go in and out, it's going to show me where I'm going. And one thing here to note is because when I roll over that, I'm no longer over the div. That's why it like disappears when I go in there. So what I usually do for that, normally whenever I do it, I actually make a separate drop target, and I'll show you why that border stayed in just a minute and how to fix it. I usually make a separate drop target, and on drag start, I actually like put a container above all of them, like that just like covers each one so that it's on top of everything specifically for that reason, because you can't really control what's inside. I mean, you can, but it's more of a pain to me than just putting a cover on top. So let's fix this to where on drop that needed to remove it, but we didn't tell it to. So on drop, I want to also just do a copy of this. On drop, I'm going to remove the class also. So if we start that process over, I'm going to drag this untitled one. I'll just go to, actually, let's just go here. Okay, so now it dropped it and removed it. And actually, let's set that, let's do what I was saying. So let's put div on here, and this is going to be like a cover. So this is going to become our new drop target instead of this outer being droppable. Okay, so we're not going to actually drop it onto that div. We're going to drop it onto this div, and this is going to be hidden by default and only show up on all of them when you start dragging. So we'll use some external or run flow actions to do that. Let's go task row cover, and I'm going to position this absolute. We're going to go top 0, left of 0, width of 100%, and height of 100%. And this this needs to also have a little bit more context on it. I'm going to put it inside of this outer and make the task outer be relative, position relative. So what that does, when you have position relative, it will put this inside of that outer, positioned inside of it. So this outer is now position relative, which forces this absolutely positioned thing to always remain inside. If I have it outside, it'll actually go above that, which is going all the way to the grid. You can actually see that I have it selected over here, and because the grids show you in the studio that element selected across the other pages, you can see it's actually going outside of it. So I want that in here instead. Now you can see that they're all like bound inside of that. And the other thing we need to do here is put a z-index on this. A z-index is, you kind of think of like X and Y, up and down, left and right. Z is sort of the third dimension on a browser, which is like what's on top of each other. And I'm going to put like a z-index of just 100 here. It really just needs to be above nothing for the most part. And the browser is going to, because it's the only thing in here with the z-index. If you used z-index for other stuff in this project, you would need to make sure that this, like if you use something with z-index inside of that row, you would need to make sure that this task row cover has a higher z-index than that. Otherwise, it won't actually be on top of it. And then by default, this needs to be display none. And the reason is, as it sits right now, I can no longer click into these because that's sitting on top, right? So if I do display none instead, now I can click into these again, right? But what we need to do is we need to make a flow to show the cover. And then on drag start, we need to go across all the rows and show all the covers. And on drag end, we needed to hide all the covers. So we're going to make 2 flows for cover show and another one for cover hide. So we're just going to select the element of what I didn't rename to cover, which I should have. Then we're going to do another one, cover hide, and hide completely. Cover. Okay, then on drag start, we're going to do a run flow on page, and we're going to run it on the task row, the cover show. And then we're going to make another new one because we don't have it, called drag end. And we're going to paste that, but this one is cover hide. And then we have to also go back to our outer and actually set the event for drag end. We didn't actually have one. We also might want in drag end, because sometimes you might have like a scenario where you end the drag on top of something. So like you show the blue border at the bottom, and then you don't drop it, but like an escape key happens, and the drag has ended, but you never left the droppable target, and so the blue border just stays there. So what we also want to do is on drag end, we want to just basically go to every task row and do the same thing as drag leave. Right, so that way, under all circumstances, now that the blue border should disappear. And then there's one other thing we need to do, or we don't really have. Actually, we do, because when we drag enter, we're actually entering and leaving this cover, not the div itself, right? So we need to actually go to the outer, and we're not doing drag enter and leave here anymore. We're actually doing drag enter and leave on the cover.
Isn't the cover hidden when it starts?
I'm showing it now. So when you start to drag, I run a flow that just like shows them on every row.
I see.
So that way the drop target is actually this,
Yep.
Drag leave. And then we have to change one other thing, which is where we're adding that. We're no longer adding it there. We're going to add it to the cover as well. And I think because the cover doesn't have a border radius, it'll actually keep that row, the blue bar, straight as well. Let's see. All right. Yeah, so now when I move over it, it's not, Look at how weird you see the...
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'll tell you, I got some weird stuff going on with my computer. But now it's actually working really well. So like if I hit escape, it should, so it got rid of it. If I go up and down, now it's much cleaner feeling, So I can drop it like that. The other thing we could do too is we could just like go a little further with it on this task row cover. We go height of calc 100% plus 0.5 EMs, because I think there's a 1 EM gap. I think that will actually, so now it kind of like put it in between, because that cover is a little taller. So now it just feels like, okay, I understand what it's going to do. It's going to drop it right in between those two, right? Nice. All right. So now we need to make it to where we can drop it onto here. And also when you drop, it needs to make sure to reset which which grid it's in, right? So like if it's changing statuses, it needs to accommodate that. So we got to handle that in the drop. So in the drop here, I'm moving it, but I actually also need to update the status ID of the one that I'm dropping. So that, remember the one we have dragging ID, dragging index up there. We also need a dragging ID now. So when we start to drag, I need to also, in addition to knowing the index, I also now need to know the ID of the record that I'm dragging. I'm going to call this dragging ID. Instead of array index, it's ID. So I'm gonna bring both. I'm gonna have the dragging index and the dragging ID on the root page. And then on drop, I'm gonna use the index to rearrange it based on where it's at in the grid. But I'm also going to update the task where the ID is the one from the dragging, the status to be from a variable on the parent page, the ID, because the parent page is actually the status. All right, so I'm dropping it into there and it's going to update that. Now we can't actually do this yet because I don't have any tasks over here to drop it onto. But we can set another drop target here that makes it to where basically whenever you don't have any tasks, there's somewhere to drop it. So let's set a drop target on this overall outer, and we need to have a drop thing that occurs here, which is effectively this action. You know, it's pretty much this action, just updating it. So let's go over here to this. We're going to do a drop action or drop flow. I'm going to paste this in. And then on the outer of the card, so this is the whole status card, need to now add a drop event. And we would probably want to do the same thing here of like make a cover. Eventually, what I would do is like make a cover or have a specific drop target where you can like drop it into that when there isn't anything. Like we can make a nice little, like a nice little image here or something that's like drop one here or whatever, something like that. Let's see if this works. Let me think about where's the, my goodness, do you see that? It's just craziness. Okay, it's not liking my drop target. Why? Why did it not like the drop here? It's like ignoring it as a drop target. Let me just refresh, make sure it's not that. Oh, I think it's because there's actually nothing there. I think it actually has to be like, I'll probably need to make that the drop target. Let me try that. I think I actually need to do what I said and like make a spot for it to drop. Let's remove it from here. Oh no, that's not it at all. I just wasn't thinking. You delete this off the header. It's just because I didn't make it droppable. That's why. That droppable actually sets certain HTML that tells it that it can be dropped on. Okay, so that worked, but I didn't tell it to refresh or anything. So let's see. Just see what it's doing. All right, so it did attempt it. Oh, but the ID isn't there. The ID of the record's not there. What did I miss here? Let's see. So on drop, task. Oh,
Current page.
yeah. That's why. That's why. And that's actually wrong over here too. So on drop, yeah, it was trying to find the dragging ID on the current page, but there is no dragging ID on the current page. It's on the root. All right, so let's do that again. So here, and I don't think, yeah, it's still not doing it. What? Let's see. So it's got that, but now my I didn't notice both of them were blank. So the parent ID is wrong. That's not the right thing. Let me make sure I've got that right. Let's think. All right, so here on my drop. So the reason is that this is not getting the status from the parent page. This should be getting the status from the current page. So I had these wrong because I just copied and pasted it, right? I copied and pasted it. Now the context changed. When I'm on the status card, the ID is the current page. There is no ID on the parent page. All right, one more try. There we go. All right, so the last step is I just need to make it update, refresh the list after that. So let's go back here and refresh tasks afterward. And that's going to trigger the change event, which should set the order and stuff. So if I drop this just up here, it should put it in there. Sweet. Now let's try. I'm curious to see the order. Oh, these are those blank ones. When it came through without IDs, it actually created them. Okay, so here's my 2 completed ones. So it did not reset the order. I'm curious to see though what happens if I drag this to here. Okay, so it did it, but I have to also set it to refresh on that because it's changing the where it's going. So I think probably out of time here today, but the way that I would go next is on drop of this, I'm just always updating the record. And I really shouldn't be doing this because that means that like even dropping inside of the same status thing is going to be sending a request to the server and updating the record. And it just takes time and effort to do that for no reason. So what I would actually do first is check. I would have a condition here that says, am I dropping it in the same status that this record is already in? And if I am, then don't do anything. Just the reorder is fine. If I'm not, if it's a different one, then go do the update record and go forward and do the rest of it. But I think that at least gets us pretty close. Oh, I forgot to do the refresh there. Let's do that one last step here. That would be, I guess I can just do it as a run flow on the other page. Just do it on the parent status card and refresh the tasks. I think that's all we'll have to do. Yep. But I also have to refresh my own. Because if I don't refresh my own, it's not actually removing it, so I have to do both. So not just that one. I should actually just do this on all of the status cards in this case. And that should do all of them. Drag this over. There we go. So there would be one more thing to fix here, which is getting that order. I feel like it's close, but it's not quite. You can see it's like it's not getting that order just right. I wonder if that's because I feel like there's just a bug in here with these orders. Yeah, you can see like a bunch of these got reset to like they're all 0 and 1.
I think there's a bug.
There's some bug in there. I don't understand. But see, like I think if I do this, I think when I'm resetting it, it might be forcing another bug. Like when I just did a refresh, I'm basically not testing anything. I'm just like refresh. Like these things where it's just like refresh all the task cards, but it's in the middle of resetting the order.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this is not a proper way to do it. This should actually be update the record and then go get them after the fact. Let it reorder and then go get them. But I don't think we have time to go any further. We're almost 2 hours in. But this got pretty close. Something like that. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm gonna need to get some water here in a second. And yeah, what else? Are there any questions that we should ask or that we should answer that were asked?
There weren't really any questions asked, I don't think. Just little ones that I mentioned already. I think that's probably it. I mean, it's kind of cool. I bet like that's a good enough tutorial on the drag and drop that you can kind of extrapolate, because every drag and drop scenario is different. It's all custom anyway.
Yeah, it is totally different. I actually like, you know, the types of drag and drops that where it gets complicated is whenever you're doing these, like, I'm changing record data to change its like where it is in the system and the order, right? And really all we've got to do is go one step further from where we're at. First of all, we need to figure out whatever that order bug is. Hopefully it's just in dev. I'll go check that out. Because it should just like automatically do the ordering. Like I don't ever think about it. I just set it and it does it, you know? So maybe it's just something in there that we broke in dev. And then setting where we have these two different statuses, it should just be going to do the gets, and the reorder should work just fine without it. Like it shouldn't matter, you know? They're totally independent of each other, so it should just work. But I don't know. I have to go a little further. And Alex, to answer your question, I want to figure out whatever's going on with the ordering in here first to see if it's just a dev bug, then yeah, it can just be a pattern. But if it's not just a dev bug, I'll need to see what it is, and then we can turn it into a pattern. And Josh thought the exact same thing before we were starting. He was like, will you make this a pattern afterward? Yeah, cool. Anything else, Drew?
I don't think so.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone.
Thanks for watching. It's weird to end because you have no response, but
right. Later.
Later.